Do you think one mind is better than many? Neither do we. A University of Chicago Booth School of Business MBA is for curious and collaborative people who value different perspectives and ideas. Chicago Booth takes pride in empowering and being empowered by women of diverse backgrounds. We believe that fostering an inclusive community creates an environment of analytical, open minded inquiry and produces knowledge with enduring impact. Learn more today at chicagobooth.edu/elevate. Welcome to the Ellevate podcast, conversations with women changing the face of business. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Ellevate podcast, History Makers. I am so excited for this week's guest. Anybody who's been listening to the podcast for a while will know that this was definitely a geek out moment for me. I am a huge Broadway person, huge Broadway nerd. We talk about that in the podcast, of course. Today, I am talking with Helen Park, who's the first Asian woman Broadway composer. You might have heard her originally on the show listed as the first Asian woman to be nominated for the Tony for Best Original Score. She's also the first Asian woman Broadway composer, period. And so we talk about that. We talk about, her love of music and how she found music. We talk about the process of creating a Broadway show and how it is a much longer process than you probably think. And we talk about the explosion of Korean culture, worldwide and how influential it's become. So let's go ahead and get to that now. Welcome, Helen, to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It is so amazing to have you. I'm so excited. We've had a couple of instances recently where I feel like magazines were burying the lead and the first was even bigger than they had initially reported. And so you have two firsts to celebrate.
Yeah, it is definitely an honor, these titles, and the fact that, that I made history is it's such an honor, but at the same time, it's really baffling. It's so mind blowing that now, in 2023, this is happening. I am the first Asian American woman to write a Broadway score, which is really, it's really a shock. It's still kind of surprising to me because, growing up, I just saw so many other amazing Asian women composers. I grew up seeing them everywhere. And so, yeah, while it's a huge honor, it's also, I take it as something very serious, and I take the responsibility seriously.
Absolutely. And as I grew up, I was born in Maryland, but I grew up in Texas, lived in New York for 5 years. But I was always a Broadway showgirl. Always. My mom started taking me to the Dallas summer musicals when I was 5. I think we went to see Beauty and the Beast for my first one. And I always went to see the touring productions. When I was in New York, I saw as many as I could see. And it's genuinely baffling to me because I know that musicals haven't always been the most diverse, but especially how far it seems they've come, in the past few decades. The fact that technically it was at the very end of 2022 that K-pop made its debut, but that it took this long for an Asian woman composer.
Yeah. And to be honest, when I was growing up, I really didn't think composing for Broadway would be an option for me. Because I hadn't seen any, there's hardly any women in the composer field, but especially Asian women or people of color, women of color was just not in that composers group that write for Broadway. And so I didn't really dare dream to be a Broadway composer when I was little. But I think, in the recent years, Hollywood took a step forward, I think, in being more diverse, and there were a lot of women writers and directors have been gaining a lot of attention, and even in the composer field, I think there's way more diversity now than before, and so in that sense, I think Broadway is a slightly slower in terms of really progressing in that direction, but but I think we are slowly moving towards that, and I think that's yeah. I think yeah. I just feel like it's great to be a part of that change, and but yeah, it truly it truly is baffling. But at the same time, when I was little, I just like I I just thought of it as a man's job. And I think in that sense, we've come a long way since then.
Absolutely, we have. So you kind of alluded to it a little bit. I always like to start with, I know it's the big question, answer it however you like. How did you get to where you are today?
So when I was little, like when I was 5 years old, I started playing classical piano, like a lot of other Korean girls. And my mom wanted me, my brother, and my sister to be like a trio. Like she dreamt of us becoming a trio, and so my brother would play the cello, my sister would play the violin, and I was playing piano. And I was the only one that stuck with piano, and my sister and my brother, like they hated they hated playing these instruments. But and so when I was into it, my mom thought maybe I could become a concert pianist. So she started uh, really being strict with me, and she was really ambitious about me becoming a pianist. And I was born and raised in Korea, but I moved to Missouri when I was in second grade because my family, we were there for 2 years. And so during that time, my mom was like super serious about my piano playing. And so I went on this state competition in Missouri in back in like 1994. And the first year, I got third place in the Missouri state. And my mom was very pleased. She was like, oh, maybe she has hope. But then the second year, I went on the same competition and I got second place, which obviously it is an advancement. But my mom thought, okay, you're not number one in Missouri. You probably won't ever be number one in the world. So she was like,
Oh,
oh, okay, so music is a hobby for you. Like she was like, is I'm not going to be too ambitious with you with the classical piano. And I was actually relieved. And then that's when I started I was so into classical music, but I started exploring other genres. I remember in Missouri, I made friends who were like so into like Stevie Wonder and Motown and like Michael Jackson. And so I started listening to a lot of pop music and jazz and R&B. And so, yeah, I started really being into all different types of genres of music. And then when I went back to Korea, in fifth grade, uh, that's when I started listening to K-pop music. I remember the first time I bought this cassette tape. It was of this group called Rula, and they're like two boys, two girls band. And yeah, I was so hooked, and from then on, I was listening to a whole bunch of K-pop artists, and then I remember in middle school, I first wrote my first song. And that was because in Korea, there's Parents' Day. There's no like Mother's and Father's Day. It's just like combined. It's Parents' Day. And I had no money and I wanted to buy them a gift. And so I wrote a song for my parents. And that was the first time I started writing songs. And um, from then on, just like I wrote songs as a hobby. But my parents were pretty set on um, believing that I should become a doctor like my dad. Um, and so, my parents both love music, but they just encouraged me to pursue music as a hobby while pursuing the career of becoming a medical doctor. And so I went to, I actually went to Canada for high school because I missed America so much, and I begged my parents to send me to America to study, and somehow I ended up in Canada because it's close enough. Um, but yeah, I studied high school there, and then I went to college as a pre-med student. And so I was studying medicine or uh, life sciences pre-med, but I was also majoring. I was double majoring in piano performance, and through that, I was in music theory classes and all these different music classes, and I just wanted to go all in on music. Like the only reason I was hesitant at first was because I knew how hard it is to make it in the music industry, and it's such a risk. And I knew that there's a lot of obstacles. Like I'm a foreigner here, and I am a woman, and uh, there were just like so many reasons why I would not make it. But I just felt like I needed to take this risk, um, and I needed to choose a regret. Like I might regret later on um, never having tried this, um, and being always wondering what it would have been, or I could regret um, having tried and failed awfully. But I chose to try, and so in third year of college, I shifted my direction, and I started teaching myself music production and songwriting really seriously. And but those were the kind of hard years because I was I needed to learn so much of like actually composing and writing songs on the computer and actually producing the sounds that I so badly wanted to create myself. The sounds that you hear in pop tracks. I wanted to make sure I could do that myself. And and so yeah, I was just really focusing on um, sort of honing my skills and preparing to become a songwriter. And so I went to Korea, and I submitted my songs to all these labels. And there was one label that was pretty big K-pop label, um, and they really wanted to work with me. They wanted to put me in a girl group, and I would write songs for that band and also be in it. Um, and so they kept asking me to write more and more songs, but then they didn't really commit to a timeline, or there was no guarantee. There was no actual signed paper, and because I wasn't graduated, my parents, started pressuring me to go back to Canada to finish my studies, at least finish my degree. And so I went back to Canada, and as I was finishing up my studies, I fell in love with musical theater again. I I had always loved musical theater actually since sixth grade. That's when I had was that's when I did this like summer camp in Virginia, and I did this summer production of Once Upon a Mattress, and that was completely the highest point of my life. And so I was reconnected to that passion, and how music um, can be the main vessel of storytelling, um, and I really wanted to sort of explore that more. And like I said before, like I knew that Broadway composer is like such a long shot. Like like I just felt like I can't be a Broadway composer, but I wanted to write musical theater, and just like I wanted to study how to tell stories through music. So I applied to the NYU musical theater writing program. It's a graduate program, and so it was perfect because my parents would love that I would get a master's degree at NYU. So I applied and I got in, and um, I came to New York, and I studied at the program. And you know, during that time, between third year of college and then coming to New York, you know, I was actually in a very lonely place. Like I wrote a lot of K-pop songs. I wrote a lot. I wrote a lot of like electronic music and songs and so many lyrics, but they didn't really see the light of day. You know, they were just like in my hard drive. And uh, but when I was about to graduate NYU, my tracks were known through all of my colleagues. Like everyone at school knew about me having written these K-pop songs, and so word of mouth led to the off-Broadway theater Ars Nova, uh, as they were looking for composers to write for their K-pop themed immersive show. Um, I was, yeah, they heard about me, and I got to meet the director, uh, and then I got involved in the show. And so these K-pop songs that I wrote, that felt like they weren't going anywhere actually led me to sort of have my first job, my first professional job as a composer. And so I started writing for this off Broadway show called K-pop, starting 2014. That was when I graduated from grad school, and yeah, and then so I worked on composing and music producing for that show. And in 2017, we had a premiere off Broadway, and it went really well. It was sold out so quickly, and and it got a really great review, and so we got picked up to be done on Broadway, and so we had that 2022 Broadway production. But in after the 2017 off Broadway production, I was approached by this film company. Back then it was called Oriental DreamWorks, but later on it changed its name to Pearl Studio. But they were making a film with Netflix, and it was called Over the Moon, and directed by this Disney legend, Glenn Keane. And they one of the people there came to see the show K-pop, and they wanted me to consider writing songs for that upcoming animated film. And so yeah, I was fortunate enough to write for this animation, and that came out in 2020 on Netflix. Um, and so, yeah, I now I'm, you know, as we just did the Broadway production of K-pop, and I'm working on several stage shows, movies, and TV shows, and you know, it's I've come like in a very kind of convoluted way, but yeah, I'm doing what I love to do, which is tell stories with music and sort of explore human nature through all different kinds of sounds and music. And yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
I love that. I also love we actually have something in common in that well, I was in a high school production, but I was also in Once Upon a Mattress.
Oh, love. My favorite show.
Yeah, I was just ensemble, but it was an absolute blast.
Yeah, I memorized like the whole score and sang it like every single day, day and night. And I remember, so I like on the very last day, you know, everyone else were just like, oh yeah, this is another summer school ended. We're just coming back again next year. But for me, it was like I was gonna go back to Korea. Like that was just like my summer, like special event, and I was like sobbing. And so I have this photo where like all these other kids like are just looking at the camera, just like smiling, like just another year, and I'm like at the very end, just like sobbing, so sad.
Oh,
But yeah, it was such a high point of my life.
yeah. Oh my gosh. That's so sweet though. Um so I want to talk about a couple things. One of them is your show is K-pop. It is a love letter to K-pop and K-pop idols, everywhere.
Mhm.
What has it meant to you, and how, like, basically, just we have seen a rise of K-pop across the world like
Mhm.
none other. I mean, I don't think you can do award shows now without at least BTS and Blackpink there.
Mhm.
Like, let alone at least like a billion others.
Mhm.
What has that meant to you, watching this kind of just explosion of love for K-pop?
Yeah, I mean, when I started working on the show in 2014, K-pop wasn't that huge. Actually, Ars Nova, they were so interested in this show because it was such a kind of an exotic and different, um, world where Americans are not familiar with. And the only like the one K-pop group that was well known at the time was Psy and Gangnam Style, and and then when we did the premiere in 2017 off Broadway, that's when BTS became huge. Like that was like the start of them really blowing up in America. And of course now it's like you can't go to a store without hearing a K-pop song. But that so it was really interesting when I started working on it. It was like my um, uh, my vision and my goal with the show was to break the stereotypes, like the stereotype of Asians being weird and exotic and non-understandable, and like the music being weird or just quirky or cute. Like I wanted to share what I see K-pop as, because growing up, uh, for me, K-pop was also like pop music. When I was in Korea, like if Americans have Britney Spears, I had Boa, and I had um, HOT, when Americans had Backstreet Boys. And then there's like so many ballads and like Cape ballad singers, and then indie bands, rock bands, hip hop artists. There's so much diversity within the K-pop genre, and a lot of it is like so smart and reflective of human experiences. And even Psy's Gangnam Style is like actually like such a smart satire about Korean society, and the the wealth distribution in Korea. Like there's so much um, depth and smart uh, storytelling in the size song. And so I just wanted to just share with the world um, how I see it, which is like way more dimensional than at the time what people were thinking of when they thought of K-pop. And so yeah, I knew that uh, you know if I just follow what people expect of K-pop in this off Broadway show, um, it would have been kind of it would have been like way easier to write. For example, if I just throw in some bell sounds and then like just like repeat a syllable, like and like make it like a cutesy, like kind of a monotone melody, it would have been like a cute uh, K-pop song that is very kind of stereotypical. But I knew that that's not what I want to show, um, and and so in order to really make it more believable and more satisfying as the K-pop song, K-pop as I know, I had to really up my music production game and really produce like high quality music. K-pop in Korea, they don't mess around with K-pop. It's not lazy music. It's so much competition within the industry, and there's um, so many people sort of um, putting everything into it. It's like such a big source of it's such a big source of pride for Koreans, and it is a business and it is a big market, and so I had to put a lot into making sure the quality of the songs and the music um, is tight, and also I wanted to because it's a bilingual. K-pop has Korean lyrics too, and English lyrics, but because the audience can't understand fully just through the lyrics, I wanted to make sure that the music is universal enough, that people can understand the music even when there are lyrics that they cannot understand. So yeah, I put in a lot of my passion into the show. Um, yeah, because it really meant a lot for me to represent my culture in the best possible way. Yeah, but it was such a great joy working on this music. It's just so fun, and it's just so meaningful to me.
Yeah, and you touch on a little bit the fact that you started this in 2014. I think a lot of people, when they don't realize how long a Broadway show or just a musical in general takes to especially come to Broadway. All the workshopping and off Broadway and off Broadway sometimes. And so I think a lot of people will assume, oh, of course there's a K-pop musical now. Well, K-pop's huge. This started way before K-pop had its huge worldwide,
Yeah,
movement.
yeah, yeah. I mean, musicals on average, I think, take like 7 years to get to Broadway from conception. Um, and yeah, the journey that K-pop went through in these past 9 years, since 2014, is unimaginable. But it's kind of it's crazy because like before before 2014, like I mean, in everywhere around the world except for America, they were already K-pop obsessed. But in the U.S., I think that was in the very recent years that K-pop really blew up. But yeah, it's so crazy to me how different K-pop is perceived. Um, between 2014 and 2023, and it's K-pop really is a big part of Korean pride in America, because I remember when I was growing up and I was here in the U.S. I Whenever I tell someone that I'm from Korea, like nobody would talk about K-pop, obviously. People would say, "Oh, are you from North or South?" Like like that was like that. Like and people just genuinely didn't know much about Korea. Korean food was not popular either. Now it's like everybody has kimchi in their salads, and like there's so much. There's so many K dramas and K skincare. There's so much of Korean culture that's loved here in the U.S., but that was definitely not the case when I was growing up here.
Yeah, because we're talking about a pre-Parasite, pre
Yeah,
pre Squid Game, pre K-pop era. Like
yeah,
nowadays, it's everywhere, but it definitely was not.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So we are at time, but I want to ask the what I always ask all of our history makers at the very end of our podcast, which is we all stand on the shoulders of others who've made history before us.
Mhm.
So I always ask, who is a history maker or history makers who inspired you?
Oh, well, I mean, I think Janine Tesori is another woman composer that I really admire. She just won the Tony this year, but she really inspired me, and I know she's in the same category as me in terms of career. She definitely paved the road for other women artists. Like I saw her be so unafraid of being in this male dominated industry, um, and I learned so much from watching her from afar, that I can be confident and just I need to be not more like a man, but like just I need to really believe in myself. And even if there's not that many women around me, um, and people that look like me around me, I can, if I truly believe in myself and my voice, I will be heard. And yeah, so she's one of the many inspirations that I have as a composer. Yeah.
I love that. Well, this has been amazing. I don't want to stop this because I want to ask you a million more questions because I'm such a Broadway nerd. But is there anything that you want to say, to our audience before you go, as we're heading out?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say that, while it's such an honor to be recognized as the first Asian American female composer, I think it is so important to me that my accomplishments are not reduced to tokenism. I really don't like want just like a free pass because of my ethnicity or gender. Instead, I want to focus on being recognized for my talent and hard work. And I think that is what is going to benefit the change that we all want to make. And I kind of want to encourage all the other women creators out there to really believe in your own hard work, and that work and the effort and the talent and the skill you have, that's going to be what shines and it's going to create the change. And so, yeah, so something.
Absolutely. And if you haven't listened to the K-pop score yet, this is your plug to go do so now.
Yes, please. Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This has been so much fun.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ellevate Network drives real results for ambitious women trying to break through the glass ceiling and achieve success in their careers. We offer a platform full of resources and opportunities for growth, all designed to help you unlock your potential. With Ellevate support, you can take the first step toward achieving your professional goals. With a supportive community and tangible resources at your fingertips, you're only one step away from reaching your fullest potential. Join us today and take advantage of our 30-day free trial to start building the career of your dreams. Thanks so much for listening to the Ellevate podcast. If you like what you hear, you can subscribe, give us 5 stars, and share your review. You can learn all about Ellevate membership and all the great things that Ellevate Network is doing at our website, www.ellevatenetwork.com. That's ELLEVATE network.com. And special thanks to our producer, Catherine Heller. She rocks. Thanks so much, and join us next week.